Last of Us. Part 2 became one of, if not the most divisive game in history. Its rocky development cycle, the concerning leaks, and at last the final game led to many despising this sequel as an insult to the original that undoes everything in the first game achieved. But no matter what you point out about this shithole of a video game story, people cling to it like it's some masterpiece. It's not even close. I see a lot of The Last Jedi in The Last of Us Part 2, and I don't think it's any coincidence that mutual Last Jedi fans like The Last of Us Part 2, while Last Jedi haters mutually hate The Last of Us Part 2. It's an interesting observation to make, so that is why I strongly believe the two products have parallel problems. As someone who's ripped on The Last Jedi a million times over, I've noticed the same kind of common theme of defense points made in favor of The Last of Us Part 2. Stuff like how we just don't get it, and that we're racist misogynists because Ellie is a lesbian, even though Ellie's sexuality actually originates in the first game's critically acclaimed Left Behind DLC and blah blah blah. Seriously, I know you've probably heard this before, but it seems to me like you've got to be a certain way to either love or hate The Last of Us Part 2. It sounds a lot like a baseless conspiracy theory, but the more I thought about it, the more it fits together. I was never able to finish The Last of Us Part 2. My investment was killed based on what happens in it, and I think this is what defenders don't understand about Part 2 haters, that the second game's controversial story decision at the very start killed a lot of people's investment, and their anger is justified for a bunch of reasons. The first being that the game was falsely advertised. The trailers intentionally shot Joel Miller's scenes in a way where it appeared this would be another classic adventure between Joel and Ellie. That is how they sold the game. They knew that people would hate the in-game story decisions, so they decided to hide it. It was a conscious decision to lie and deceive people, and no one should ever forget that. Also, when the game leaked and fans were furious at Naughty Dog's dumbass decisions, Sony blocked and censored the leaks. Honestly, I'm not surprised. The Last of Us Part 2's story leaked to the whole world. Thinking about it, it was bound to backfire, and when the game finally launched, of course people hated it. Neil Druckmann, the lead writer on the game, and the first one spoke about how he knew that people would hate the game, but went through with it anyways. Now, unlike someone like Rian Johnson, Neil Druckmann was the creator and mind behind the Last of Us franchise. Unlike Johnson, who was given the keys to Star Wars by a corporate entity and decided to have his fun, I apply the standard of authenticity equally among all writers, so if there was ever a key difference between The Last of Us Part 2 and The Last Jedi, this would be it. Nobody can tell Neil Druckmann he didn't understand his own universe. As much as I don't like it, he had the right to do whatever he wanted with his story, because it was based on his intellect. However, I feel the one exception to this is when the writer contradicts his own work, which is what happened with The Last of Us Part 2. The character of Abby is nothing more than a last-minute afterthought, and that's because her motivation for revenge is a retcon. Looking at who is supposed to be Jerry Anderson in the first game's original version, his ethnicity and name was changed. In the source files, his name was actually Bruce, so it's clear they just turned around and changed things. Normally this isn't a big deal, but given what this retcon was turned into, it raises a ton of eyebrows. The damage control Naughty Dog pulled with telling us to go in with an open mind is so lazy. It's just an admission that people have to be a certain way to enjoy the game, and it again reminds me of how defenders think that we just don't get it. They knowingly created a game they knew people would hate and tried to damage control it. I just have one honest-to-God question. Why you would want people to hate the game? Because the only answer I can presume is that just like The Last Jedi, you wanted to spark discussion and divide the fan base because you couldn't come up with a story everyone would actually like, because that's a much easier and shameless way to gain notoriety. Seriously, it's like we're looking at The Last Jedi in the mirror, a movie designed to provoke people and insult their intelligence. And I have to ask, what the hell are you going to do with the story after you've killed half the investment from fans? Where's your story supposed to go after that? It's basically where every train wreck goes to, a junkyard, and The Last of Us Part 2 embodies this all. They wanted the game to be about hate and the cycle of violence and blah blah blah, that it undoes everything the first game achieved. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't a key point of the first game about having something in your life to fight for and whatnot, embodied in the relationship between Joel and Ellie? Why the hell is it now just miserable people in a miserable story and a miserable outcome? It's like the anti-Last of Us game almost. Similar to how Toy Story 4 was described. And it's like, what happened to what was set up in the first game? The rumors that Neil wanted to kill off Nathan Drake don't help either. I have to wonder if there was actually a secret reason that the first Last of Us game succeeded that wasn't Neil Druckmann. I'm very curious. Maybe back then he was put in his place, but that's just me spitballing. I mean, my theory would explain why Joel was all about introductions and giving his complete full name to a bunch of strangers when one of the lessons he taught Ellie in the first game is not to trust strangers on a whim. I hate how the second game pretty much undermines the debate about whether or not Joel made the right choice at the end, because now we have a definitive answer. No, he didn't. When I played the first game, that question was stuck in my mind, and then I remembered what the second game did and how it pretty much ruined that. It's clear the second game was not very well thought out because it's got so much lazy writing in it. Like seriously, how the hell can you defend this shit? There has to be some ulterior motive to defend it, like political allegiance or something, because there's no way a game like this would have passed 10 years ago on anybody's radar. A game like The Last of Us Part 2 only exists because there's a landscape for a game like that to exist. It's a shitty world we live in now when it comes to entertainment, that incompetent morons are allowed to write stories to brilliant franchises and they ruin it through wokeness or whatever the hell else. Anyone who defends this game has to always remember what happened exactly when this game did come out. Never forget that Sony turned off the ability to leave the game a negative review on Metacritic and other shady practices up the arse. I really am sick of not talking about stuff within its own merits instead of looking at behind-the-scenes shit, but I can't help it. The context behind how the game was made contextualizes the failure that the final game was. It shows that they absolutely did not care about pleasing fans, and just opted for the easy counterintuitive strategy of just pissing off half the fan base. Again, it's no coincidence that Last Jedi and Last of Us Part 2 fans are one in the same and intersect with each other constantly. It's shocking how close of a shared demographic they are, and The Last Jedi is just like The Last of Us Part 2, a divisive piece of entertainment. So hopefully I've shed some light on why people hate The Last of Us Part 2. It's a more nuanced discussion than what Defenders thinks. This is Forgotten Games Gaming Essay written by JJ Plagiarisms and narrated by Fringlish, and thank you for watching.